Hello and welcome to episode 259. This is a therapy session for everybody involved with Wolverhampton Wanderers. Another 3-2 FA Cup loss. Harry, I just want to come to you first. Just please do explain to me how we go from in the 96th minute being 2-1 up against Coventry to losing the tie.
Before I get into that, like the last few days, I've done everything in my power not to even think about Wolves or the game.
Mhm.
I've been going down like 9/11 rabbit holes and things like that to try and take my mind off it. There was a bloke in 1974. Yeah, there was a bloke in 1974, like a French fella who walked across the Twin Towers on a wire. So I've ended up on that and things like that. Fascinating stuff. But on the game, after the game, I kind of give it. I ain't really bothered, but it hit me the day later. I'm gutted. I'm absolutely gutted now. A few days later, I'll feel worse now than I did straight after the game. Because we didn't really deserve to go through, but it's such an opportunity missed, and I'm sure we're going to get onto it. I think it might really affect our season too. But how did we concede two in 3 minutes when being 2-1 up? I don't know, but it was like a carbon copy of the Man United 4-3 loss. That winner is a carbon copy. I don't know what happened. Let's try and work out what.
It was very strange for me because my flight from Porto was delayed by about an hour and a half in the end. So I was stood there in the airport listening to the Wolves commentary on my phone. And then had to get on the plane. So I was like, oh my God, right. Then saw we were losing. And then at the last, this is how close it was to the takeoff, was the last moment. I checked on my phone just before we had to put it on airplane mode. And I saw that Eight Nori had scored. So I was like 1-1. I was like, okay, right. I'm okay with that. And then obviously I'm just sitting there going, I have no idea how to even, I can't find it. I was like, should I go to the pilot? Can I ask, can you just like beam into the ground and see what the Wolf score is? But obviously, as soon as the tyres hit the tarmac back in Old Blighty, and then I just looked at it, I was just like, how the fuck has that happened? And then I saw like, how the fuck has that happened? And then looked at the times of the goals, and I was like, how the hell has that happened? Jack, you've been spending the last week, I think, rearranging your holiday because you'd stupidly booked a trip away in lots of different places. I think lots of different hotels as well, which you had to change or double book. Please talk us through this because this is quite funny.
So what happened was, like, Kasha and I have been saying for a while, I would like to go and do a tour of the Scottish Highlands and do a little road trip around there. So we looked at time that fits in with her schedule and my schedule, and we said, that we can go starting that weekend in April, which would have been when the FA Cup semi-finals were. And I said it with the caveat. This was before we even got past Brentford, I think. So I was like, said it with the caveat. Just in case Wolves get to an FA Cup semi-final, I might have to rearrange all this. And then, obviously, as soon as we got past Brighton and drew Coventry, I had to sit her down and say, look, I'm not a betting man, but I think this is going to happen here. So then I went into panic mode. I was looking at, like, can I get a 6 a.m. flight from Inverness back to London, even though I live 20 minutes from bloody Wembley, and just on the day, and then get a flight back, and just nothing worked. So eventually I just said, right, we're just going to have to, like, move it around and rebook it. And the problem with rebooking it was, if we only just wanted to do the same holiday, it's a 10-day trip, like a week later, but then it falls over a bank holiday weekend. So the cost of everything to rebook it just skyrocketed. So we spent absolutely hours trying to completely replan the trip, rebook the hotels, do all this. Kasha's like, doesn't get it, obviously, because she's not really a football fan, and just saying, like, why can't you just not go? Why can't it be on telly? Why can't you just do this? And I was like, but, I think we need to get ahead of ourselves here, because if we leave it till after the game's happened, I honestly think we're going to get through this. The bookies, I showed you the betting odds at one point. I pulled them out. I was like, this is how sure they are that we are going to get through. Like, this is how sure they are. It's because we've had the most favourable draw here, and and as a joke, we'll probably lose now, and we did. So it's been a massive inconvenience for me personally, and like, I'm one of these people who, like, we could let in a last-minute equaliser against bloody, I don't know, Burnley, and I just distance myself from football for the rest of the weekend. And to be honest, I've not really thought about it since Saturday. And I didn't really want to do this podcast tonight because I was in my happy place, just thinking about other things. I was like, oh, what am I doing? I'm playing golf Saturday. That's nice. Let's do that. And now I've got to talk about it. And I don't want to talk about it because it was one of those where walking away from the ground, I'm like, oh, I've seen it all before. And then my nephew, who's like got into Wolves quite recently, never been to Wembley, he was like crying because we completely messed it up, and these sorts of things you think about. But yeah, I've just tried to block it out really. And the answer to how it happened, I mean, it was quite. I can see how it happened. It's because one, Coventry the better team. Two, we haven't got enough players. That's how it happened. That's like we saw this coming months ago. Like at the end of January, we discussed it on this pod at length that you take a few key players out of our team. And, we're championship level. And if you think about how we performed in the last 18 months, and suddenly you take out of our team Neto, Cunha, Hwang, Dawson, we're relegation fodder. And when we saw that, just by the fact that we had to, no disrespect to Fraser, start Fraser up front, bring on the other kid as well up front. And then when you're thinking and looking at what first team players have we got to change this, they're already playing apart from the wing backs. And we changed a wing back. And it bloody worked for a minute. I'm like, bloody hell, we've got out of jail here because Benno started that goal for us to go 2-1 up and finished it. And then you just think, the thing I'm really disappointed about is it's not that we lost. Fair play to Coventry. They're the better team. Jose Sarr was our man of the match. And if we'd have won 2-1, he'd have been man of the match by a long way. The thing I'm annoyed about is the fact that we couldn't see out that 10 minutes after going 2-1 up. It's not the fact we lost. If we'd lost 1-0, you'd say fair enough, it is what it is. But it just the way we died, particularly after their equaliser to make it 2-2. If you obviously I was at the game, and rather than seeing Coventry celebrate, I was watching the players. They all dropped to their knees, and you knew then they were done. Like they didn't have extra time in them. They just didn't have the legs. They didn't have the desire. So the fact that they would then scored straight away to go 3-2 up was the least surprising thing ever, because there's just nothing more. There was no more throw of the dice that we had. That was it. That's all we had left because of all the legs and all the personnel. So.
And Harry, I think it's probably where the frustration or the sadness comes in, and it's more focused towards, you would say at this stage, Fosun. And I've backed them because they have backed managers in the past. Obviously, they haven't been Gary O'Neill, but they've spent a lot of money and had very, very little return. You think of the Guedez's of the world, that spent a lot of money and they're still not playing for the club, but still we're paying wages or still paying for them in some sense. But how does it happen that you get to this? I mean, is it just lucky that we were there anyway because nobody saw this coming? Although I think you had the NFA Cup semi-final in your predictions at the beginning of the season. But it's just frustrating. But as Jack says, when you've got no players and you haven't got a full squad, it is extremely difficult.
Yeah, but, well, you say about us spending money, which we did badly, but Jeff Fosun and Matt Hobbs has relayed this too. Even under Nuno, they've always had this fascination with having a really small squad and having a few young lads on the bench, on the fringes, to try and break into it and try and make profit on them if they become good. And it's bit us on the ass a few times now. We spoke about the Bruno Lage season where we petered away, and it's happening again. And like Jack said, pretty much every Wolves fan could see this coming. But in saying that, our objective this season was to stay up. And we've done that with flying colours, and we're still pushing for Europe. So Jeff Shee sat there at the beginning of the season. I said it last week. We've got to pretend we're a team that's just come up promoted. That's the mentality we've got to have. FFP, our hands are tied. We were praising Fosun when Everton got the -10. So he's thinking, well, I ain't spending nothing in January. We've pretty much accomplished our goal. Let's see what happens. It's been pretty unlucky, the injuries we've got. But the intensity we play at, and I was listening to Don Goodman actually on the official Wolves podcast, and he was saying how quick the Premier League is these days and how much it takes on the body. You're going to get injuries. And yes, we've had a few, but we've been very unlucky with all these injuries we've got at once at a crucial stage of the season. And Coventry, they needed us to have injuries. They needed us to underperform, and they needed to play out their skin on the day. And all that happened. It all come together for Coventry, and they did deserve it. And as much as I was gutted, deep down, I was quite happy for them. I know that's weird to say because Coventry kind of remind me of Wolves a few years ago. Like they're on this really good comeback building up, similar sized club to us. And obviously they were going mental and they deserved it. And as gutting it is to concede a few goals late on, they did deserve it, but still, we were a step away, and we've only got ourselves to blame. But it's so weird because you'll have the older generation. We're like kind of in the middle at our age. You've got the older generation who are just like, be grateful, go back to Chorley and all this rubbish. Jeff Fosun and that are doing a good job keeping us, mid-table Premier League club. Then you've got the younger generation who are like, well, we're here, have a bit of ambition, gamble a bit, try and push towards Europe all the time. Don't just settle for mediocrity, because we'll end up going down like Leicester have, or Southampton, or Everton might go down now. We don't want to be like that. So it's such a hard, weird balance. But I do have to catch myself and think we've overperformed this season. So I don't blame Gary O'Neill, although I think he shouldn't have brought Doherty on. And I don't really blame the players, because they were, like Jack said, they were out on their feet. And you can't say that this team, whoever plays, don't put effort in and don't care, because they do. You saw Cunha's post after the game on Instagram. Well, he should be captain, by the way. We ended up nothing off Kilman. Someone like Cunha should be captain. And I'm gutted for someone like Cunha, because he'd have been back for that game, that semi-final. And yeah, we can get into the details of the game, about performances and whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I'm rambling now, but that's what I'll say.
Has he got a point, Jack?
A point about which bit about Cunha being captain. Like I don't know about that, but I agree with him on the fact that it really did mean everything to those players. They really, really wanted it. Jose Sarr, once Bueno scored that goal to go 2-1 up, he went absolutely mental. And fair play, because he's kept his team in it for multiple occasions. Really, Coventry arguably should have been well out of sight by that point, and he's thought he's done enough to get his team. Thought he's done enough to get his team back, basically to Wembley, and then, he's let down again. And like the really thing again, thinking it back, like that, their equalising goal to make it 2-2. There's so many chances for us to stop that, and it's things that we've done quite well this season. But it's just we've had a day where. Well, a whole season really, where we've been relying on a few players, and now we've lost some of those players, and now some of the other players that we've always been relying on, the likes of Lamina, haven't performed on that day and just had an off day, and it's really, really cost us. But you can't get too angry at them, because it's going to happen. But I don't know how I feel, but it's a massive missed opportunity, not just because it's Coventry at home, but because you're winning with just injury time left. There was always going to be a lot of injury time. You could tell by the way it was going. The referee wasn't very good. I've not watched it back, so I honestly don't know whether that was handball or not, or why they stopped it. I don't know. I haven't brought myself to watch it yet, but you guys can probably fill me in.
So I didn't go to the game. I watched it on telly with my dad. That it got to the point on that VAR check. Look, at first glance, I just went, yeah, handball, like it hit his arm, went in, and then they were slowing it down, going on about all these rules. And it honestly got to the point where me and my dad were just saying, just give them the goal and move on. She was going on for nearly 6 minutes. And in real time, you're like, yeah, goal, but they had to like zoom in, see if it hit the bloody t-shirt part, and in the end, I think by the letter of the law, it was handball. But honestly, it got to the point where I was just like, give it. So that 5 minutes they added on was the 5 minutes they got the winners, wasn't it? Because we had 9 minutes added on. It's probably been about 4 or 5 without that massive long VAR check. But another person I feel sorry for as well, Jack, just we'll talk about the game a bit, is Aït-Nouri. That bloke.
Yeah.
I know Sarr kept us in the game, because we could have been 4 or 5-1 down without him. But if it weren't for Aït-Nouri, we wouldn't have even gone 2-1 up. He was just up there. He was the only man with the quality, it felt like, to get us back into it, and he took his goal well. He set up Bueno for the second as well to put us 2-1 up. And the bloke's an absolute incredible player, and I think he's better playing up the top than he is left wing back. He needs to be involved more. He's an absolute genius, and I think we're going to do really well to keep him, because he's a superstar. He really is. He stepped up in the absence of some of these players, and people like Lamina, I think we said on WhatsApp, didn't we? Incredible. He's one of our players of the season. He had an off day. He was playing out of position. He had an off day. He gave the ball away. I can't remember if it was for the third or second Coventry goal. I don't know what he was trying to do, but he gave it away. I thought Chiroma, the young lad who come on, did better than Fraser. He was involved in one of the moves for the goals, but the fact that Fraser and Chiroma are even involved in an FA Cup quarter-final just says everything we've been going on about, to be honest.
I thought they both looked a bit lost at points, to be honest, and it's to be expected, really, because of the age, and it's no disrespect to them. It's just, it's unfair on them to be putting that much pressure on them, I think, but it's what we've had to do, and it's one of these then, when you go back to, well, who do you blame? And I still don't know. I don't think you can necessarily blame the players. You can blame the ones who might have had an off day. I don't think it's Gary O'Neill's fault because you can only play the cards that you're dealt, can't you? And it is unlucky. At the same time, we were saying we think we're still a few players short in January after selling 2 first-team strikers. But pretty much every fit player you have, you would consider a first-team regular, was on the pitch at some point on Saturday. And that's with the 2 kids playing. So just so short in numbers. And it is just a massive missed opportunity. But fair play to Coventry. I'm sure I don't begrudge them their day out. I think they're the better team. I think if we nicked it off them, it would have been really harsh on them. No, it'd been really harsh on them. So fair play to them. But at the same time for us, it is a massive missed opportunity again. And the fact that the draw came out and like we've got Man United, a team that we have performed against in recent years. You'd think if we had a few players back, we could give them a go. But at the same time, if we were turning up to Wembley with that same squad of players that was fully fit on Saturday and nobody else, it'd be a waste of time, wouldn't it? So, what do you do?
Well, yeah, I mean, judging on the Man United game, which was absolutely electric, watching it on the Sunday, you just think, actually, you need the strength and depth. You need everybody to play in the best of their ability. You need the squad the best it can be as well.
Yeah, I just put up Dan's comment then, and he said about people going in on Gary O'Neill, which is just the natural thing people do, isn't it? He said about Kilman's defending for the last goal. I agree. Like I said earlier, it was a carbon copy of the Man United winner, bent it into the corner. I don't know how he got there, and Kilman was just stood there watching, but he was knackered. He was absolutely knackered. And again, he didn't have one of his better games, but he has been fantastic this season. Again, I don't think he's captain material, but you can't deny how good he's been this season. I think we missed Dawson at the end. I love Santi Bueno. I think he's been brilliant as cover. I think he's a future centre-half starter for us. But Dawson's experience those last 10 minutes would have been so valuable to have, just to clear everything and shit house the ball out for a throw in.
Just to shout at them, really.
Get them organised.
That's the thing. Yeah, get them motivated and get them in line.
And because we were quite all over the shop with the formation we were playing to go 2-1 up, a bit like the Man United one. We got back into it, all at sea, flying forward, and then we were just all over the shop defensively. And obviously Coventry played out their skin. They did. They've been playing well in the build-up to the game. That Ella Sims has got 2 hat-tricks in 4 games, and then he got another 2 on the day against us. And yeah, they played out their skin. And I did a Coventry podcast before it, and they said, Derby, we up our level, you have a bad game. It's everything played out perfectly. It's the FA Cup. We weren't the only team that bottled it in that round. Obviously, Liverpool had their drama against Man United. That's the football, isn't it? But it's horrible being on the receiving end of it. For me, it's not as bad as the Watford one.
No.
But it's bad. It's bad. But if we had a fully fit squad and that happened, like if everyone was available and we lost like that, oh my life, that'd have been horrendous. But yeah, and hopefully Coventry go on and win it now.
I mean, is there a man of the match in there, Jack, or is it Sarr?
I mean, it's Sarr or Aït-Nouri, isn't it? And that's it. Really, I think when you're looking at what they contributed to the team, I know Aït-Nouri. The same as I said last week, though, isn't it? Like it's the same conversation. We said Aït-Nouri looked better as soon as you started playing a bit further forward, and Sarr was a contender for man of the match, and it's the same thing. So now those are the 2 players that we're relying on. So they'll both be injured next week, and then it's a good job we're safe, isn't it? Really, it's a good job we're safe on paper, and at least we haven't got Villa next or anything. So, but I don't know. I don't know what to do now because it's just a difficult thing. Because although we're really disappointed, and I'd have loved a day out of Wembley, it would have been great to do it again, win or lose. It was still, we talk about it a lot, don't we? Just because of the occasion and just the weekend, the funny stories that come with it. I don't want this to just kill our season, but on paper, like we lost to a championship team because of all the the injuries we've had. It's not going to bode very well, and we're just too reliant at the moment on those big hitters. But when you look at the stats and you look at the goals that have been contributed, particularly by the front 3 that we're missing, your Hwangs, your Neto, and your Cunhas, that's just us, isn't it? That's the Wolves team this year. So any team where you take out their 3 biggest contributors in goals and assists is gonna struggle. So I don't know. I just hope it doesn't kill our season. But I think unless someone comes back, I know there's been photos of Cunha in training, but at the same time, as it's not fair on the kids to be having a go at them in this situation, it's not fair on him expecting him to be ready back, all guns blazing, his first game. So I don't know, really.
Man of the match
still upset.
for me. Yeah, I agree with Jack. 8. I'd probably. I saw 8 Nori, but I'd probably say 8 Nori to be honest. They both give us a chance, but 8 Nori was incredible. And also, I thought who played all right as well. And when he went off, we really missed him. Was Toti Gomez. When he went off, I think we missed him a bit as well. He had a bit of energy and was defending okay. But yeah, apart from that, there was some poor performances in there. There really was. But I agree. But the thing is, on the build-up to it, we said like the Sheffield United game where we really struggled. And Sheffield United probably end much better than Coventry, to be honest, the way they've been playing this season. So it's just so weird how we just struggle against these teams we're expected to beat at Molineux. And I've got to say it, the crowd, I watched it on telly, obviously. Jack, you were there. The Wolves fans were terrible atmosphere. Again, they sat there and expected to win. The atmosphere was rubbish. And in that Brighton game in the previous round, the crowd got Wolves over the line. And people were pointing out on Twitter, there was only 23,000 at that Brighton game. And then people were saying, is that because none of the, people who only come when we're winning and when it's good weren't there type thing? I know that rubs people up the wrong way. And they say a lot of the fans that used to go, have been going for years, have been priced out and they turned up for that game. But I don't know, maybe that's clutching at straws. But the atmosphere at Molineux has really struggled since post-COVID. And there's the odd game where it's really good. But if we're playing a team that we think we're going to beat, we're a bit, we're a bit bad at Molineux, and I know it's an 12:15 kickoff as well, which didn't help, but that was a big factor for me that the crowd were quiet up until we went 2-1 up, but not good enough in my opinion.
One poor performance came when the winning goal went in, Jack, and that was from Mark Robbins, the Coventry manager. A certain ball boy. I don't know if you saw any of that. No. I think the ball boy is
too busy crying.
I'll go to Harry then.
That was the ball boy.
The ball boy was giving it the big one, I think, to Mark Robbins, and then when Coventry scored the winner, I think he just got in his face and was just extremely.
Yeah, but I don't care. Like the ball boy was giving it him. If you can give it, take it. I know he's only a young kid, and I think Gary O'Neill just made that the main narrative after the game, just to deflect from the shocking defeat we'd just had. That's all I saw him really talk about from the things I saw on Sky Sports and that. One of them, he apologised for it, is what it is. I would do more than what he did if my team I was managing scored a last-minute winner away at the Premier League Cup. I'd probably strip naked like Tonka off Mike Bassett. I'd have run and done a cartwheel down the bloody sideline. I'd have done a Mourinho. For Porto. So, yeah, we'd have been doing a Tonka. I mean, you can't begrudge a bloke for losing his shit after his team just scored a 10th minute winner. And he said sorry after, and the kid shouldn't have wound him up. And he cried, and he won't do it again. It was, wasn't it? 90 plus 10. Is that right? 90 10.
We'll call it 100.
Yeah, there we go. 90 plus 10. Hold on. Yeah, 100. There we go.
Oh, right. Well, it is the international break. There are players,
thank God,
going on international duty. I mean, to be honest, some of them, you'd think it would be nice for them to have a little bit of a break. But Sarabi's been called up for Spain. I think that's great for him. Justice, I think. He's been playing extremely well. Totti for Portugal. Doherty for Ireland. Tom King is weirdly away with Wales. João Gomes for Brazil. 8 Nori for Algeria, and Lamina's going away with Gabon. And Boubacar Traore is teamed up with the under-21s for Mali. So, I mean, it would have been nice for them to have a break, I suppose, to take it a little bit easier because they're mostly friendlies at the moment, aren't they? So, has it come at a good time, though, Harry? I know we always say that, has it come at a good time? I mean, with injuries, you'd always say yes. I mean, I don't think we're going to see Pedro Neto again this season. I wouldn't have thought, but we're thinking maybe getting Cunha back certainly would be a boost.
Yeah, it's a good time for us just because of the injuries and because of the devastating defeat. It gives, the players a little bit of a break to try and regroup. And, that's not something we should brush over. The fact that Neto is pretty much out for the rest of the season, according to Gary O'Neill, that's another huge blow as well, isn't it? Probably means we're going to see him in a Wolves shirt next season, though, if he's out for the rest of the season. We just got to hope, obviously, Cunha's okay. Hwang will probably be back. Hwang would have been back about a week before the semi-final. We need Bellegarde back as well. He's been a bit hit and miss this season, but we definitely need him back. Because Sarabia, you just mentioned Sarabia there, he's been hit and miss as well, and I thought he was pretty poor against Coventry. But when he's on it, he's on it. And yeah, the Neto one was a huge blow. It was just like salt in the wounds, wasn't it? We just lost, and then he was weird, wasn't it, in the build-up where he didn't talk about any injuries. So I got excited thinking, oh, he's playing it down because Cunha's going to be on the bench, Bellegarde's on the bench, like Hwang might be earlier than we think. And then he comes out after the game and he's just like, yeah, they're all crocs still, sorry. So that was weird. But yeah, in terms of internationals, fair play to Sarabia. I know obviously Gomez with his Brazil journey as well, but not really asked about England and things like that, if I'm honest. I never am until it gets to the major tournaments. But yeah, hopefully we can regroup and have a few good players, because Villa won't be easy, will it? And I know we're going to get onto it, but like Jack said earlier, I hope our season isn't over.
Do you feel that way, Jack? I mean, obviously, I don't think at the moment there's ever a good time to play Villa. Obviously, we got the draw against Molineux earlier this season. But it can go either way. But they've been a little bit hot and cold this time around.
They've not been great lately. They've had a great season, but the last few games, they've not been perfect by a long stretch. And it's the same thing, isn't it? Like Harry just said, if Gary O'Neill was keeping his cards up his sleeve and he dropped the bombshell that on Saturday when he dropped that starting lineup and it had been Hwang, Cunha, and Neto, would have been like that'd have got the crowd up, wouldn't it? That'd have been like, bloody hell, okay, right, we're here. And it's the same with the Villa game, really. It's the same thing. It depends exactly who we got back. Mm-hmm. Any of those players coming back, I wouldn't expect them to start. So again, you're asking yourself, well, how are we going to set up? And it's just as we've seen in the last few weeks, it's just very little attacking threat, I think, at the moment. And when you're playing the three midfielders, and even with the wing backs who have been great and chipping in and playing further forward, it just doesn't scream goals, does it? And that's my worry, is the fact that it's going to be, if we have no more personnel than we did for the game against Coventry, when we get round to the Villa game, I haven't got very much hope at all. Whether that means the whole season's over, I don't know. But it's the same as the thing under Bruno Lage, because we can say that Saturday was a massive missed opportunity in terms of us getting to an FA Cup semi-final. And we can say that this January, like the Bruno Lage season, is a massive missed opportunity for us getting into Europe because we didn't invest. And it's one of these where, it's happened twice now. And I know we've got financial fair play regulations and all that stuff we need to sort of navigate, but I don't want to constantly be a team of just looking at missed opportunities where, other teams and bigger teams have bigger squads and be able to cope with this. But you can't ship, when you've got a small first team squad like we have anyway, you can't lose two players in January and not replace them and expect everything to be okay. This is just like eventually going to happen. So is our season over? I don't think it's going to be pretty, to be honest. I don't think it's going to be pretty towards now and the end of the season. I think we'll get a result here and there, but it's a good job we've got, is it 41 points we've got in the moment? I'm not sure, but it's a good job we've got those on the board.
We've got two camps in the comments. One is NF220, who says, I don't see another win this season. And then Dan says, I don't think the season is over at all. We won against Fulham with the same team we lost to Coventry with, and they battered Spurs last game. You can't write this team off over one loss. I think I'm in that camp. I mean, let's have a look at the fixtures. So obviously, Villa we talked about. Late kickoff on the Saturday, 30th of March. A couple of days later, Burnley away. West Ham at home, 6th of April. 13th of April, the Morgan Gibbs White derby away at Forest. 20th of April, Arsenal at home. 27th, Luton at home. Man City away. Palace at home. And then Klopp's last game, let's ruin the party at Anfield. Final game of the season against Liverpool. I mean, you must see a win in there, Harry. You're not in the camp that the NF2204 is.
No, yeah. What I hope happens, because what you got to say about this team is we've had a few setbacks this season, and we've come back and done really well, and we've won games we never thought we would. Like that Fulham second half was heroic, wasn't it? With the players we had on the pitch, I can't believe we actually won that game, which was a great point from Dan in the comments. But I hope, we talk about that Bruno Lage season, I hope that don't happen. I hope what happens is what happened when we lost in the semi-finals to Watford. I hope we regroup, use it as fuel, and then go on to qualify for Europe. That's what we did, wasn't it, that season? We're all heartbroken. And then we went on a massive run and ended up getting 7th and getting into the Europa League. I hope that happens. And with this team, with some of the characters we've got in it, and if a few players do come back, they could use it, couldn't they? And we could actually get up to those European places, which would still be a massive ask, even if we had every player available. It's going, you know what I mean? It would, wouldn't it? It's So with the situation we're in, it would be a minor miracle. And as I mentioned, our objective was to stay up. But I hope the season don't just peter out with a whim. And there's only one person you can blame for that, and that's Jeff Shee, and Fosun if it does. But as I said, I keep saying it, you've got to remind ourselves we're lucky to be in this position. We're punching above our weight. So one of them.
The game I think you mentioned there where we sort of turned it around was obviously having lost to Watford in that FA Cup semi-final was to go and beat them at Vicarage Road. Yeah. And see the difference, and it will come back to that strength in depth again. The team that day, Patricio, Ryan Bennett, Cody, Bolly, Doherty, Dendoncker, Neves, Matinho, Johnny, Jimenez and Jota up front. Cavallero, Costa, Gibbs-White, Ruddy, Sace, Vinagre, and Traore on the bench. I mean, there are some similarities in that side, but I think realistically looking back, at the time, I would have said that Raul was a world-class striker, had many arguments with lots of Arsenal fans who thought Lacazette was better, even though he wasn't getting picked for France at the time, even though how could you be world-class if you're not playing for your country? And obviously Jota as well. So do you think that's a difference, Jack? Is just that firepower just isn't there at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, when you read that team out then, I was thinking, yeah, that's a lot better than the team that we definitely, that we put out on Saturday. And yeah, you can see why that team kicked on. But it's a good point by Harry, though. And there are similarities, I think, between the Nuno era and the Gary O'Neill era in the fact that we have a setback and they come back all guns blazing. That happened a lot under Nuno. Like you're saying then about the FA Cup disappointment. So hopefully it can be the same again. But as I've said like earlier on this podcast, we need more up front. Like starting Sarabia and Fraser up front is just it's just not good enough, and it's not going to cut it in the Premier League. So we are relying, I think, depending on whether we finish about 13th or 8th, depends on how quickly Hwang and Cunha come back. People saying that Cunha might be back for Villa will be massive, but again, we're putting a lot of pressure on him. But at the same time, he's going to have to just step up to it. But I think he wants to be back and playing. You can tell, as you say, by his social media posts and the fact that he's there cheering the team on, that he's one of those who'd rather be playing. But it's just unfortunate that we're having these conversations. But as we've said, we saw it all coming, didn't we? But at least we are safe, because at the start of the season, if you listen back to one of the very early pods, myself included, I honestly thought that after Lopetegui went, I thought we were doomed. And he's done so well, Gary O'Neill, and it's just a real shame that he couldn't get over the line on Saturday, because he'd be living the dream now, a living legend. And like, you take some of our best players out of the team, he's still got us to an FA Cup semi-final. So I don't know. I think we're just going to have to, once I'm over Saturday, which I'm not quite yet. I think today has helped. It's been cathartic. But I think we just need to just enjoy the ride for the rest of the season and just get behind them. And if we finish 13th, we finish 13th. If we finished 8th, then brilliant. But whatever happens. And either way, it's been a successful season, hasn't it? Let's be honest.
100%. Yeah, I mean, like I think, Harry, you'd listen back when it was just me and you on the podcast. You'd listen back to the first episode of this season and said, it was doom and gloom, and the predictions weren't great. But there's a couple of comments from Nick in the comment section, just saying we've got too many forwards out on loan. And I suppose hindsight is a wonderful thing. However, it did seem a bit of a case of beggars are trying to be choosers in a way, which Coutinho out on loan, fine. I mean, he's still pretty raw in my opinion. Podence had probably one of the worst attitudes I think I've seen since promotion.
Yeah, but like you say that, and I know he was unhappy, but he just started on Saturday. And you'd have had more faith in him, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But no disrespect, but you
so would Fabio.
Okay.
Fabio, Sasha, I think you took them into the mix as well. The bench all of a sudden just looks a lot stronger, but we've let these players go out on loan, Harry. And do you think it's because Gary O'Neill is such a good man manager and works with the players so well and gets the best out of players that he doesn't want poisonous people or people that don't fit into that system, maybe making the atmosphere within that group more toxic when it doesn't need to be? And that's the reason why they've gone out on loan, rather than going, oh, well, actually, I may need a striker, but I don't really like you.
Yeah, I'm Podence. I remember Gary O'Neill at the time said he'd give him another chance, but I think Podence wanted to go. He thought, that ship had sailed. Fabio and Sasha, he made it very clear that he just weren't going to use them. Before they went out on loan, he never brought them on a sub, really. He gave them a few chances, but not much. But he was told, because I remember his press conferences towards the end of January, he was told by the higher ups that they were going to bring a striker in. If they two were going out on loan, he believed that they would bring someone in. They let him down with that, and now we are where we are. And obviously, I think Fraser scoring that goal against Brentford in the FA Cup replay it was like a bit of false hope, wasn't it, that he would be good enough to be the backup? And no disrespect to him, but I think Saturday showed that he's not really. He's had much better performances than that, and he was just like a body on the pitch. And he could have put a fridge up front and done the same.
It's his fitness as well, isn't it? I think he's been asking a lot from somebody who's been playing very little first team men's football, let alone Premier League first team men's football, to come on and play every week and perform. And as I said earlier, it's not his fault. It's too much pressure on him, but I think he's looked off the pace, let's be honest. And again, he was set to go out on loan to a League One club. That's the level that they thought he was at. And the only reason he's in this position is because of our lack of bums on seats. So, it's not his fault, but at the same time, it's not good enough from an overall Wolves point of view, and the fact that we've been left in this position.
Agree. Just one last rousing comment from Dan. The state of the games: Spurs double, Chelsea double, City the shit at their shithole, sitting ninth, safe with a team that the media completely had to go down. This season isn't over. I tend to agree. Now let's move on to FFP, because I think this will make the game away at Forest on the 13th of April. Probably a little bit more interesting than it maybe would have been otherwise. Something from Steve Madley in The Athletic, Harry, saying, I think the way you phrased it was perfect, is that Nottingham Forest were trying to tell on Wolves when it came to profit and sustainability rules. It was over, I think, so Forest arguments against receiving a punishment, which obviously got a 4-point reduction, that they breached the maximum loss limit for not selling Brennan Johnson in June last year, and still waiting until September so they could get a higher fee because he joined Tottenham, which was then included in the following financial year's accounts. And they'd sort of said, well, Wolves managed to sell in the same window, but they were allowed to put Ruben Neves', I would say, inflated transfer fee to Saudi Arabia in their accounts from the previous year.
Yeah, I think, like I said before we come on, it is like when you're in the playground and the teacher tells you off for something someone else has done and they try and dob you in. Yeah, it's a strange one, really. I don't know. It's just, I think that's what I point back to what I said about Jeff and that earlier. They've done well with that sort of stuff, haven't they? And we could be really going mad about us losing points and things like that, although we'd have been all right this season. But it will make it a bit more tasty, because I saw Wolves fans on Twitter as well winding up Forest, saying that them buying Gibbs White off us put them in the shit as well. That fee that they spent on him. Yeah, they were going. And people were like sharing the news inside. It's true, yeah, it probably is. But that is a bit harsh. They'll probably appeal it, won't they, like Everton did, and try and get a reduced points took off. But people like Luton must be sat there thinking, oh my God, are we coming? Are we going? Like, how many points are they
ridiculous.
Yeah,
it is ridiculous. Like, I don't see how in the same season, a few months later, you can say, oh, this team has X amount of points distributed, and then change it, because that changes everything. Like, you can be looking at games thinking, oh, we've only got to win this one because we play these and then we get a draw. And a couple of points either way changes the whole thing. So I don't like the way that they're doing it like this, where they're just like, okay, this is the next thing, so we'll take a couple of points off from this week, give them back next week. Like, I don't like it. It's not good for anybody. So they need to properly lay down the laws and this whole appeals process just to make it fair. And I've seen lots of stuff on Twitter. I don't know very much about it, but saying that Everton got a worse points deduction than Forest, even though Forest lost more. But I don't know how it works, but the whole thing is they need to, if they're going to be doing this and they want to enforce this way, they need to do it better and they need to stand by their decisions.
Harry, do you think that they've tried to sort of flex their muscles in a way by handing out points deductions to what you would call probably established Premier League teams, to say you can't mess around with rules in a bid to show that they can regulate? And by completely fucking it up, they've proved that they can't regulate it in any way, shape or form, whilst Man City sit near the top of the Premier League, having won the quadruple last season with 115 charges against them.
Yeah, I can see why, especially Everton. I can see why they're furious about it. But another thing as well, I don't think it's been signed off yet. I don't know if you just mentioned it. Sorry, they're changing it next year. They're changing the FFP rules to you can spend 85% of your revenue as a club or something. So it's all changing. They've realised that it's a bit too harsh what they're doing now, and maybe because the big boys are moaning about it. Because there was a vote, wasn't there? Wasn't there a vote recently about all this, and it's all going to change. So I don't know. Forest, the fact it feels like just from the outside looking in, it feels like they should have a massive points deduction. The amount they spend when they come up, how they've only got away with this little points deduction they've got is beyond me. But yeah, Everton are going to keep fighting their case, and I can see why their fans are furious. And Chelsea and Man City will just keep laughing, won't they? And nothing will happen to them.
That's the thing. Yeah. Go on, Jack. I'll bring you now.
I agree. I've got no sympathy for Forest. When that was happening with that first transfer window before the Premier League and they'd signed 20-something players, everybody saw that coming. So they should have been expecting this. And it's part of now the gamble, isn't it? It's a gamble of staying up and thinking, right, we'll take this risk. We'll take this points deduction in the hope that it gives us, rather than 1 year of Premier League football revenue, we get 3 or 4 and they can build on that and be established, kind of, like we've done. So, it just becomes, rather than actually helping the problem, it's just another, chess move that you have to navigate if you want to come up and stay with the big boys. But like we said last week as well, it doesn't matter, because if financial fair play doesn't get here, then VAR will, and if not, something else will. So,
it's
that's
true.
the point.
And I think, Harry, your point on revenue, if it's down to revenue, then that 100%, it works in the big clubs' favours, unless you're seemingly Newcastle, who have to sell potentially players like Gomeres. And who are they going to sell them to? Man City. And it just goes around in circles, and you just think, actually, I think it's got so out of hand that, the horse has bolted now, and you're trying to shut the stable door. And I can't see a way out of this, apart from potentially the Man Cities and the Liverpools and the whoever's go off and do their own Super League thing, and then you have a much fairer playing field for everybody to go off. But then I think just over time, the cream floats to the top, and it happens all over again, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does feel like they're protecting the bigger clubs. We've said it so many times, and the gap's getting bigger as well between the Championship and the Premier League in terms of quality. We've seen that this year. And just on Newcastle, if that rule change I just mentioned does come in, that'll suit them to a T, because they can start spunking all their money then, which is what they want to do, isn't it? And at the moment, they can't do that because they're in, as you mentioned, in risk of having something done to them too. So, strange one. I don't know. We'll see what happens with all that. But as I say, that 85% revenue rule, I believe, hasn't been accepted yet. Like, it hasn't been signed off. So we'll see what happens with that.
But it brings us nicely onto a podcast that Jim Ratcliffe, one of the new shareholders of Manchester United, has been talking about turning Old Trafford into what could be the Wembley. I think he calls it the Wembley of the North. He probably used Tottenham Hotspur's, the new White Hart Lane, as an example of having a huge ground. And obviously Manchester United has the pull where you could have a ground that seats 100,000 people and you will sell it out every game, because it's as much a tourist attraction for tourist fans as it is for Manchester United fans who live locally and want to go to the games on a regular basis. But he was talking about, Harry, turning Old Trafford into more of an entertainment venue where you would go pre-match and you can eat some food in some restaurants, have some drinks in lots of different places, somewhere where you'd have entertainment, where you could have sport on after the game, depending what it was. It sounds a little bit more like an American model moving to, where you've got something happening somewhere at some point. It would ease congestion on the railways, on the roads on the way home, and it makes the matchday experience a much better one. What do you think of that? And if Molineux was to go down that route, would that change your matchday habits, or are we just of the age now where we're so ingrained in drinking as much as we can before the game, having a pint at half time, and then going home, maybe going out wherever we want to go out afterwards, rather than staying at Molineux?
Yeah, I think we're stuck in our ways a bit, but people who come every now and then will obviously make the most of something like that, wouldn't they? Going before, staying after. I think if for example, if the North Bank bar was a bit cheaper, we probably would go in there before the game and maybe stay in there longer after. We've done it a few times, haven't we? but the prices of the beer and the food in Molyneux's astronomical compared to a standard pub price, which is expensive as it is these days. So unless they somehow can sort out the prices for beer and things like that, personally myself, nah, turn up 1 minute to free, leave straight away and go. That's what we do, isn't it, really? But I think, as you mentioned, touristy fans or people who don't get to Molyneux as much anymore and go twice a season or something, they'll probably make the most of it. But they're just trying to make as much money as they can, and they're Man United, as you mentioned. So it'd be interesting.
I mean, just before again to ask you the same question, Jack, I think they could probably make a lot more money behind the bar in North Bank if they had people that could pour pints.
That was my
and
point.
Get
That's what I was going to say.
Quicker, because unless you go down 15 minutes before the halftime whistle, you're going to miss kickoff. But because the queues are outrageous. I mean, how they haven't sorted it out, they obviously haven't trained them properly. They're just there. I mean, I keep going back to it, Harry. I know I keep mentioning it every time, but honestly, I had a pie the one time, and the bloke was just following the other bloke around trying to get the tongs off him, and I was like, ask him for the tongs, and he's just like, he's going. It's like they were mute. And I was like, what is happening here? Like, there's no communication, not talking to each other. The one girl was like trying to pull a Guinness and there was nothing coming out. And I was like, I think it needs changing. And she was just stood there looking at me. I was like, can they not talk? Like, because it was honestly just there going, nothing's coming out. I was like, well, no, it's not going to come out, is it? Because there's no fucking beer in there. Anyway, get off my chair. I'll pass on to Jack.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Is the one thing that makes the difference is the service plays a big role in it. And they have tried to do things in the past where to get people into the ground earlier, they put, buy one, get one free or buy one, get one half price. But the problem is you're still stood on a concrete concourse in the cold. So, it's not exactly the same as going to a nice warm pub, is it? So what do you do? So, yeah, I mean, I'd be up for embracing it if they actually did something proper, like a proper fan zone or something like that. But the fan zones we've been to in the past are usually just, here's a gazebo out in the cold, and there's a DJ from local radio. It doesn't really. It sounds very American, and I'm guessing they're trying to get the whole sort of like tailgating experience into English games where you get there 4 hours before and you stay there until long after and you're doing all these different activities, ultimately spending money. But I don't think it'll work for a few reasons, like, the weather, the fact, I say that it can be cold in America in some places, but, the weather is one of them. The fact that there's more space in America. So, you're not just rammed onto a cold concourse. You can build a proper marquee or something rather than a gazebo. So I'd be up for embracing it, but it all centers around beer price and service. And like you've just called out, the service is not up to scratch at the best of times. So that's really gonna put people off.
Just on Man United, Sam.
Yeah.
If they bring Southgate in, which is rumoured, Old Trafford will be empty anyway after 6 months, so I think I'll worry about it.
Are they planning to move from Old Trafford? Is that did it have any legs?
I
don't know.
Mark Gold. Oh my god, that you've just reminded me. Mark Goldridge put out a tweet, the Man United watch along bloke, saying, they can't move from Old Trafford, it's iconic. And someone quote tweeted it saying, "This is your Old Trafford, mate," and put like a PC and a green screen on it.
That's so true.
That's so true.
It's so true.
Like it would affect it. I know.
Going back to the service though, like I go to lots of away games, and Wolves is one of the only grounds where they don't pre-pour for half time.
Why won't they
don't pre-pour?
Data.
Nick said that in the comments.
It's a cashless system, so you know exactly who has bought what, when they bought it, how many they bought, how many times they bought it. Even if you did 70% of an average match day, you are going to be so much quicker. Although if they were pre-pouring, that Herbert would still be stood there going, nothing coming out at 3:30. So we'd be in the same fucking situation as we were before.
Yeah,
honestly.
It's like they're there, and then when everyone starts coming down at half time, they're like, "Oh my god, where's everyone come from?"
It's like a surprise.
Whoa, what's going on?
It's quiet for the last 45 minutes. What's going on?
Unbelievable. Oh dear. Anyway, that's the end of the TED Talk. I hope you've enjoyed the therapy session as much as we have. We will be back next week to go through obviously the Villa game, and hopefully we'll have some news on some players coming back from injury. But otherwise, we will say goodbye to Harry Manson.
Yeah.
Jack Williams.
Ta-ra, everybody.
And it is a goodbye from me. Goodbye.